What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another BTL Exclusive, the Final Four preview on the Bookit Sports Podcast Network. Jovan, before we dive in and start talking about this insane tourney, talking about NC State, Purdue, Bama, and Uconn, wanted to see if you've been tuning into the ladies on the hardwood as well. They've been playing some really good games. We've got four pretty dominant squads left in the women's college basketball tourney. Any thoughts on Uconn, Iowa, NC State, or South Carolina getting involved?
It's been pretty tough to ignore the Caitlin Clark show. This is like the most entertaining women's tournament that I think we've had in a while. I know me personally, I haven't been too tapped into what's been going on previous years, but now just feels like you got not just Caitlin Clark, but you got the super team at LSU. We just saw that matchup. That was sick. You got Paige Beckers and Uconn over there. It's like you got a lot of exciting faces. So like that Iowa LSU game was pretty sick to watch, and that felt like everybody was kind of united and rooting for an exciting game there. So that was pretty cool. But now we have like a three, I guess you could argue, maybe four teams going to the Final Four that are just like the Avengers. So it's like super sick to see this come to a close, and you have some more exciting matchups there. So I don't know. I've been pretty tapped. How about you?
I guess it's just NC State's year because they're the outlier once again in the ladies tournament, just like the men's. You got South Carolina, who's just, some bruisers. These ladies are legit. South Carolina, I really don't see losing, but we'll talk about it. Uconn and Iowa, two great programs in college basketball. You got Caitlin Clark going against Paige Beckers, and Uconn, who's just been the staple of women's college basketball. That game is going to be insane. Iowa's laying 2.5 points, a.k.a. Caitlin Clark, laying 2.5 points to Uconn. Who are you taking in that matchup?
You ain't going to catch me fading Caitlin Clark in that game. It's the last thing I want to do at this stage of, her collegiate career, regardless of who they're playing. So you will not catch me laying a single dime against her in this game, or if they make it to the tournament or the final, that either.
I saw a tweet that was funny the other day. Some kid was bitching on the feeds about, a school project he had in college where he talked about, the positive impacts of legalized sports betting onto ladies sports and mainly college basketball, and how, legalizing the sports betting, allowing that to happen, will grow the sports, will help get more eyes on college basketball and women's college basketball mainly. And I don't think that's incorrect at all. I think a lot of people I've seen in this space are getting involved in the ladies tournaments, trying to bet on Caitlin Clark, betting on Uconn, South Carolina. These teams are wagons. I have never seen, this much skill in the women's tournaments in my, 25 years of life. It's been really fun to watch and especially bet on. That kid was bitching in the tweet because he was mad the professor gave him a C on the assignment. And now look at what's going on. You get all these freaking apps talking about Caitlin Clark, more than 30 points and stuff like that. It truly has made, watching the ladies tournament extremely exciting. And, you get some wagers involved, you get some skin in the game. It's been just as electric, as the men's March Madness. I'm excited to see how it plays out. I don't think anybody's beaten South Carolina. They are legit. I feel like they could probably beat my Wizards in the NBA. They're that bad. The South Carolina team means business. So we'll see if either Uconn or Iowa can end up pulling off the upset down the line. But there's a reason why South Carolina was minus money before this tournament, to take home the trophy, right? They're that good.
Yeah.
They're stacked.
They're the Heat big three.
They're stacked.
Maybe full five for them.
Insane. Well, yeah, we're not going to talk about the ladies tournament the entire time, although it is, good to acknowledge, and it's been really exciting and fun to watch. Let's talk a little bit about this year's tournaments for the men, okay? It's been overall chalky-ish for the last couple rounds, I feel like. I don't know about you, but I picked all the wrong upsets in the first couple rounds. I feel like everybody was very upset-happy, trigger-happy on the upsets after what happened last year in the tournaments where, we saw teams like FAU and San Diego State making runs to the Final Four, to the championship even. It was unbelievable, seeing these Cinderella stories play out last year. Everyone this season getting too trigger happy, and we've seen the chalk kind of settle in down the stretch here. We're stuck with NC State once again. Both the men and the ladies are taking care of business, and we're seeing DJ Burns somehow, some way continuing this legacy run. They're in the Final Four. We've got Alabama, who we knew had the talent all season. They just didn't play a lick of defense. Now they are, and they're one of the best teams in the country. Not really surprising to see them still here with how they've been playing. And then you got the two donkeys, right? The two absolute wagon one seeds in Purdue and Uconn, who I think are going to be very, very tough to beat. Jovan, this year, I feel like everyone was thinking it was going to be all, mid-majors and upsets. There was going to be a crazy team like San Diego State in it. But, once we're here in the Final Four, it's got to be, Purdue and UConn, getting at least the most action or the most noise. These teams are taking care of business, and it might be boring that they're winning these games by this much and taking care of these, other opponents with such ease. But in my opinion, Purdue was so due, and UConn coming off a natty last year. These teams are dominant. I have no problems watching them.
Yeah, I mean, these two teams, when you watch them, it's scary because, like, none of them, they don't have any holes in their game. Like, obviously, when you look at Purdue, you have Zach Edey, who's the unstoppable force that nobody has been able to slow down in all of college basketball this season. Then you have the guards around him that pick it up when he has his very few moments when he can't put it down. And then UConn, just that entire team. Obviously, you have Klingon as the center, but between Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, like all of those guys, they're such a cohesive unit. It's like when you look at both of these teams, it's just like you watch them and you can't see how anybody can beat them, which is why it kind of feels like at this point we already have our championship matchup set.
Well, I don't want to give away any spoilers, right? We still got a couple minutes here on this pod. We got to go over both matchups this weekend on Saturday for the Final Four, NC State versus Purdue and Alabama versus UConn. We could talk a little bit towards the end about who we think is going to end up with the trophy, winning the national championship this year. Is it going to be UConn running it back, winning 2 years in a row, which is very rare and very hard to do? Is it going to be Purdue finally getting off the schneid and winning their first national championship ever, right? They still have not done it. I feel like they always choke or find a way to mess it up, but this team could be different. It looks like they might be. And then you got these other two squads who are playing their best basketball of the season with some great characters. I mean, DJ Burns, he's the star of the show. This kid is electric. Everyone on earth is rooting for him and NC State to beat Purdue. Purdue has got to be the least liked one seed in this tournament. It's not even close. Nobody wants to see Zach Edey making free throws, getting that team advancing to the championship. And that's exactly the team I want to be backing, to give you guys a little bit of a hint. Let's dive into this first matchup, Jovan. It's going to be nuts. NC State is getting 9.5 points on the spread against Purdue. The total is 146. All right. NC State plus 1,800 before the Final Four to win the Natty. Purdue plus 205. Jovan, does NC State have any chance keeping this game close? And if they do, how are they going to keep this game close?
So I don't want to ever rule out that they have a chance. I'm going to say they have the slightest of chances, but this matchup kind of reminds me a lot of what we saw from Gonzaga and McNeese in that game, which, not talking about the final, total of the points in that game, but as far as like what NC State has to do, they're not just going to let Zach Edey post up one-on-one, whether it ends up being on DJ Burns or Muhammad Diarra, and you can probably pencil in DJ Burns for some foul trouble because that's kind of assumed. But they're going to double very, very quickly. So, like, that's what McNeese did against Gonzaga because they really had no other choice. And Gonzaga came out, and it was the greatest shooting performance in the history of a first half in March Madness. And not that I think Purdue is exactly capable of doing that to that level that Gonzaga did in that game, but that's what NC State's going to have to do. So it's going to have to be, like, not that Edey isn't going to get his all on DJ Burns or whoever is going to be guarding him on the inside, because he certainly will. I think he's going to absolutely dominate that game. But that's the only chance that NC State has to keep it close. But with that said, I mean, I looked at this game and I thought that that spread would be a little closer to what we're seeing in the Uconn-Alabama game, touching a little above double digits, and then we end up seeing 9.5 down to 9. So that was a little surprising to me.
Well, they could be getting some bets, right? I could definitely see this NC State team, bringing in some public action against, the villains who are still left in this tournament in Purdue. I would not be shocked to hear or see, and I'm looking up the splits right now. I know it's early. We're still a couple days out. We're recording this podcast on Thursday night. All right, so things could change, but it's still, a good indicator to see where the money's at. And right now, Jovan, 70% of the bets and 65% of the handle are backing NC State to cover. Not really surprised. If you go look at the ML, I mean, they're getting 63% of the bets on the money line against one seed Purdue, with debatably the best player we've seen play in college basketball in the last decade. All because he's not fun to watch, he's not exciting, and the people are itching for another FAU or San Diego State story, right? They want it. I don't blame them, right? That's the way the human brains work. We all want the underdog story. This is March Madness. This is why we love the tournament so much. But let's be a little realistic here. Okay, DJ Burns, bless his heart. I mean, the fact that he's carried this team, up to this point, has been incredibly surprising to me, I feel like, after watching this NC State team all season. It helps when you have a really good guard as well. And DJ Horn, who's, potentially an NBA talent, might not have the size, but that kid can play. He can hoop. I feel like it's been the perfect storm for NC State down the stretch. This team has not lost since they got into the ACC tournament. People forget their coach was literally about to get fired within a week after that ACC tournament. Now we're here. They're in the Final Four. His job is safe. He's done enough, right? NC State getting all this publicity, and DJ Burns, getting all this hype, going on all these podcasts, as he should be. But is this team going to be locked in and dialed and ready to beat Zach Edey? Are they even capable of hanging with Zach Edey? Most teams aren't, right? DJ Burns is great and all, but is he going to be enough? I think he's going to struggle immensely against Zach Edey, whether it's getting in foul trouble, whether it's straight up just not being able to defend a 7'5" behemoth of a man. And is Diarra going to be enough? I don't really think so. And he's been hanging around a lot on the perimeter anyways. So maybe they'll double him. That's probably the only chance NC State has to keep this game close. But after looking at the splits and seeing what the public's betting early in this matchup, I've got no problems, taking Purdue to advance and taking care of business. I do like them on the spreads. I lean that way, Jovan, and I want to hear your thoughts on that 9.5 spreads. Not in love with it, but definitely lean Purdue to win this game by 10+.
Yeah, I still do lean Purdue to run away with this game. It's just I think Edey is going to dominate the game the way that he has the entire tournament against everybody they've faced, and especially like once you get DJ Burns in a little bit of foul trouble. I know he was able to fight through it against Duke, against a much smaller paint presence, obviously, between the two guys there. But I don't think that's going to be the case with Edey. It's just whenever NC State, and I guess we can talk about prize pick squares on the back half of this too, whenever NC State can't just throw the ball into the post and let DJ Burns eat, it's just a lot of ISO ball with tough shots. And I mean, in the beginning of the tournament, when they had some tougher matchups, they were able to overcome that. But they also played a couple of teams that were either small or missing, big men. So they were small for that reason too. It's very obviously not Purdue. So I worry about the shoulder of the load being with those guards. I've had trouble believing that they can keep that close.
If our listeners are trying to get a more realistic, opinion or breakdown, or I guess you could call it, grading these teams on how good they are, the remaining 4 squads left. NC State, they're getting 9.5 points in this game. Alabama's getting 11.5. Sure, they're playing a better team. But NC State's getting less points on the spread in the Final Four. If you look at the odds to win the Natty, they're plus 1,800 compared to Alabama, who's plus 1,600. So although Alabama might have a little bit of a tougher matchup in the Final Four, it's clear to the odds makers, which is the most important thing in my opinion at this point of the season, because they're sharp and they're never wrong, and they're not losing coins on the most bet games of the season. Give me a break. Have you been to Vegas? Have you seen how shiny those buildings are? Come on. They're not that shiny or cool looking or fun with the public cashing out on the Final Four weekend. Give me a break. But that gives you a good, depiction of how the odds makers value these squads. And NC State, if they had any sort of pulse or chance, in my opinion, they would not be sitting at plus 1,800 to win the national championship with how well they played down the stretch.
Sure. Yeah. 100% agree.
Any opinions on the total, Jovan, before we talk about some prize pick squares that we like?
Yeah, I definitely lean the under. And it's partially because NC State, I think they're going to struggle to score. Obviously, it's we haven't been able to see their offense without a fully functioning DJ Burns for pretty much the entirety of the tournament. We kind of think it's going to turn a corner and he's going to get stopped a little bit, but now you have, the toughest test of them all. I think he's going to get into foul trouble. It's not the hottest it takes because he always does, but now you just can't shoot over the top of guys. And yeah, he's been a great, difficult shot maker for the entirety of this tournament run. So you could say, who's to say he's not going to do it now, but I really struggle to believe it's going to happen. So it's just a lot of guard play, which don't get me wrong, like DJ Horn's been great. Michael O'Connell's been great when he's needed to, a little less scoring, a little more facilitation. Diarra has sneakily been huge for them, especially on the boards. And obviously that gets neutralized a little bit when you're playing Zach Edey. He's given them a lot of second chances. It's just that offense, I think, is in a really, really tough spot. I mean, not the hottest take when you're going up against Zach Edey, but it's a little more than just that. So I would say under. I think they come out a little slow. Purdue's not really forced to pick up the tempo, and it's a slugfest for a little bit.
I do like the under in the game. I feel like the total was a little bit high, and you know what my contrarian brain's already thinking, just looking at these Final Four games without even doing any research on the teams and the matchups. I already lean the under. Okay,
Yeah.
9 out of 10 people you go up to on the street who are locking in bets for these games, and mind you, these games are getting more action than most, right? It's the Final Four. Everybody's locking in this weekend for Saturday. I don't care who you are. You're watching these games and you're probably betting on them. All right, grow up. But these, Jovan, the under's going to hit, but there are a couple guys on Prize Picks that I would like to target. So I want to hear your thoughts on these two angles here because they are more thans, which is why I'm a little bit confused here. I'm at a crossroads. I like the under in the total in the game, but I do like two guys to contribute. All right, it's DJ Horn, not Burns, on his points. I really would like to take DJ Horn to carry this team. I think when push comes to shove and they're down, 10 with 10 minutes left, he's going to be the guy. It's not going to be Burns. And I could very well see big DJ Burns get in foul trouble or get gassed down the stretch at this point of the tournament. Having to guard Zach Edey, he's going to be focused on defense completely in this matchup. If he doesn't utilize, most of his energy on the defensive side of the floor, NC State has no chance keeping this game within the number or anywhere close, right? So in my opinion, I'm liking DJ Horn. I know it might be more of a popular angle. I don't even care. He smacked this the last two games. He's dropped 19 and 20 against Marquette and Duke. I like his more than 16.5 points on Prize Picks. And then I go over and look at Purdue's side. And I'm thinking, everyone's going to be on Edey. Everyone's going to be, just fading Purdue on the books or back in Edey, on Prize Picks or whatever on his props. I'm sitting here thinking it's got to be someone else, right? I feel like the two guards on this Purdue team have been slept on a little bit, Jovan. I'll be honest with you down the stretch. I think they're extremely slept on. These two guys, Braden Smith and Lawyer, who I hate to admit it, but these guys have done enough. And I feel like this Purdue team has enough help this year where if Edey gets in foul trouble or if he gets off to a little bit of a slow start, one of these two guards is going to pick it up and they're going to step up and carry. And I want to target Braden Smith, the veteran, okay? Crafty, little, but he's seasoned vet. He's got plenty of games under his belt. And I just feel like he's the guy. When I look at who's hoisting this trophy, on Monday, Zach Edey feels too easy. Uconn feels too easy. Why not Braden Smith going off this weekend and having a legacy tournament when it's been all quiet, talking about him over the last month or two, but this guy carried them through the whole season. He was unbelievable. Scoring, dishing the ball. I like Braden Smith doing everything. I'm going to take his PRA more than 24.5. I think he's the one that's going to end up carrying this team. Sure, Edey might end up hitting his points. I'm not going to take it. If you think I'm locking in Zach Edey more than points, you don't know me, okay? But I will go with the secondary guy who I think is being slept on here in this spot to at least facilitate or maybe just take over the game if Edey's getting double covered, and that's Braden Smith to go more than his 24.5 PRA.
I like those angles from you, Krabs. Not going to lie. And I was looking a little bit at DJ Horn, for the same reasons I said. I think it's going to have to be a lot of ISO ball. It's kind of how NC State plays when they got a pretty solid matchup, or not solid, but tough matchup in the paint for them, which they obviously have. So I'm with you. I'll probably be on that too. And if it makes you feel any better, I know he's been going over this number, but he was at 15.5 when we were sweating it out at the NC State Duke game, which he finally went over after a legacy second half. And he's at 16.5 against Purdue, which is interesting. So
good sign.
Yeah, yep. I'll be with you there. I have some Purdue angles too. I have one of the very square angles. I think it's just 80 boards in this game, which it's at a ridiculous number. Like it's 14, which I think he's been at. He's gone over this or touched this number every single time in the tournament. I think he touched 14 exactly twice, and then he soared over it the other two times. But especially if DJ Burns is in foul trouble, I don't think he's going to be much of resistance on the boards anyway. It's not really his game. That's more Diarra. But they're going to put a body on Diarra. This is one of the teams where whether you put Trey Kaufman-Renn down there, who's been really solid defensively at the 4, or a guy that I'll talk about in a second, Mason Gillis, they have the size down there to put a body on him and just kind of let Edey do the work, which is what they've done against a lot of these teams. So I think Edey is in for like a 20 rebound game. I think it's going to be just one of those games where I'm perfectly fine squaring up because they have the obvious size advantage there. I think he feasts in really every single way, but the boards, give me a legacy game on the boards for him. And then the other guy who I just mentioned that I kind of like, haven't really fully decided how I want to attack him yet because there's a couple semi-weird squares up on Prize Picks. I kind of like Mason Gillis, which he's like between him and Trey Kaufman-Renn. They've been at the 4. They use Trey Kaufman-Renn. They've kind of talked about it a little bit. They like him against teams that run a lot of ball screens and that are really good using it. So gives him a little versatility. It's where he can make up a lot of ground that Zach Edey can't. But against teams kind of like NC State, where the ball screen is going to be not eliminated, but not as big a focus of their offense because they're going to play iso ball by the end of, when everything's said and done. They use a little more Mason Gillis, and he's coming off of a bagel in their last game. And of course, we have the point square up. They have a lot of squares up for this game, but they also have a random 1.5, 3 square on the board, which I think is pretty interesting there. So, I mean, you can only think, like I talked about, you would say like a lot of teams would know that they would just have to go double Zach Edey, but he's really unstoppable no matter what you do. So they just kind of let him work and hope they can put a body on him. NC State doesn't have that and that opportunity, in my opinion. They're going to have to double. So like the shooters are going to have plenty of room to do nearly whatever they want. Obviously, Mason Gillis is not like the main volume guy to go to in that, but I think that square is a little odd to see it up after him. You got to find his pockets of when he's going to be a part of the offense, especially from 3. I wouldn't be shocked if that's this weekend.
Okay. Plenty of opportunities to cash on Prize Picks. If you guys want, we just gave you 4 squares that we like, and we're still 2 days out from the tourney. So I'm sure we'll have more. You guys know where to find us. All right. Follow us on Twitter. Follow our account at Bookit BTL. If you want to follow us on our show that we run every day during the week at 12:30 p.m. Eastern on Twitch and YouTube at Bookit Sports. Okay. If you're looking for more contents, if you're looking for more bets, more wagers to tail, if you just like what you're hearing from us, we're live every day at 12:30 p.m. Eastern on Twitch and YouTube. Go check us out live. All right. Feel free to drop some comments about games you're liking. Happy to talk about them. All right. Happy to get involved with the chat. All right. So it's not just the podcast we're ripping here. We do have live content if you guys want to check it out. And do me a favor, drop a follow, drop a like on these podcasts on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts, and add it to your playlists. Okay. Add it to your songs list, whatever you got to do. Leave a review if you're really feeling energetic today, and give us some support because we're trying to keep pushing these puppies out, and it helps when we see you guys getting involved. So expect more from us in these pods down the line. Definitely some baseball podcasts coming out this summer too as well. Okay.
Totally.
For now though, we still got 3 college basketball games left. Can't get ahead of ourselves, Jovan. We just covered the heck out of that first one, NC State Purdue. We're going to move here in a second, but before we do, I want to get your favorite play. I don't care if it's a spread, total, player prop on the books, a freaking overtime wager, a plus chick, or if it's just a square on Prize Picks. Whatever it is, as long as it's green, that's all I need. What is your best play? And give me a hot take for this game as well. Whether it's, DJ Burns going under 10 points, whether it's Zach Edey getting 20 boards. I don't give a hoot. Okay. Give me a hot take and give me your best play in NC State versus Purdue. What do you got?
Yeah, so I'll wrap it up all into one. My favorite play is Zach Edey rebounds, which is on Prize Picks right now at 14 flats. I think he gets 20. That's my hot take, semi-hot take there.
There we go. Zach Edey, a rebounding machine, making everybody pissed off because he's so dominant and boring. Me personally, as the contrarian, I'm actually a Zach Edey guy. And that probably doesn't surprise anybody listening who knows me or my content. I like Zach Edey. All right. And he's talking the talk recently. He's saying he's getting disrespected, which I think is a little ridiculous, considering he's 7'4" and went to IMG and was a very highly touted recruit. But whatever he's got to say or tell himself to stay locked in, I don't give a shit. Okay. Whatever he's doing is working. And as the public continues to, pile on and diss Edey and call him, a fraud for taking advantage of free throws or layups, he's not breaking any rules. You can't hate the guy because he's boring and that doesn't shoot threes or put down hammer dunks. He's playing his game. He's getting better every year. He's getting better every freaking week. I'm so excited to see what the future holds for Zach Edey. I just hope they get through NC State. All right? Yeah. My best bet, my favorite play in this game, I'm not going to lie to you, Jovan. This might surprise you. I'm going to go with Braden Smith on his PRA. Okay, I'm really liking Braden Smith. I think he goes off and carries. I know you're a Zach Edey rebounds, guys. I don't think Braden Smith is going to have to rely on rebounds to cash this, okay? It's going to be mainly points and assists. But I'll take the PRA on Prize Picks. I see him getting 25+, no issues. He is going to be the star of the show in this game, not Edey. Maybe on the boards, but we'll see who scores the most points. Hot take, Braden Smith leads Purdue in scoring in this contest, not Zach Edey. How about that?
That's a W.
All right. I haven't heard somebody mention Braden Smith's name for the last 3 months. The second half of conference play, not a single person talked about him. He's going to show up. I'm excited to see him.
Might have to.
All right. Awesome. Let's move on to game 2. This one, maybe a little bit more anticipated. I feel like NC State might be America's team in that first game, but Alabama versus Uconn. I mean, the way that the Tide is playing right now, are you kidding me? Maybe they'll put up a fight against Uconn. But then, Jovan, you look at the spreads, and you see Uconn laying 11.5 against this Alabama team that looks unbeatable right now. That should go to show you how good the Huskies really are. They're getting that respect, which they probably should be because they're defending champions. They've been there before. They have a couple of those guys back, at least enough. And they have, reloaded very well, extremely well, I could even say. There's a reason why Alabama's plus 1,600 to win the Natty and not, plus 900. It's probably because they're going to lose this game, but maybe it'll be close. What I wanted to bring up to you, which I think is crazy, and I still can't get over it, UConn's national championship odds before the Final Four starts. Minus 195. Okay. To me, that is insane. That is absurd. There's still a 1 seed, across the bracket on the other side that you're going to have to face if you get through an Alabama team that is playing like they are, better than the 2015 Warriors right now. They are like that. They are locked in. They're playing a little bit of defense, at least enough, and they are getting some of their role players to step up, and Mark Sears is that guy for them at the point. Literally Jalen Brunson 2.0. Unbelievable. Okay. But UConn's got some pretty good pieces too. And that's why they're laying minus 195, almost minus 200 to win the Natty at this point with still potentially 2 games remaining. Jovan, real quick, thoughts on their odds being that juicy to win this whole thing?
I mean, it's crazy to see. And it's not to say they don't deserve it necessarily because they have been beating the brakes off of every single team in front of them, no matter how much they cry about having a tough path, even though I definitely disagree that it was. So, yeah, they have been beating the shit out of teams. They just look so fundamentally sound at pretty much every single level. And, yeah, they would probably have to go through or will probably have to go through big, bad Purdue, which is a challenge of its own. But just in getting there, I mean, they have had little to no resistance. I mean, it's deserved, but still crazy to see that.
Yep. And, look, Dan Hurley, he likes to bitch. We know that. He's done that for years, decades even. Okay, he's been bitching before he was even on Twitter. Now we just see the tweets, right? Because he's out in the open. He learned how to use his phone. Good for him as a grown-up. And he's firing off tweets left and right. I don't know if you saw him bitching the other day when the team was traveling out there getting ready for the Final Four. I guess their flight got delayed out of Connecticut. They ended up having to take an Allegiant flight. Sounds like Spirit to me. That does not sound like the NCAA took care of our UConn guys. And Coach Hurley was letting them know on the feet, okay? It's a little ridiculous when you're sitting back and watching, a guy who's the coach of a blue blood program like UConn, who is coming off a national championship last year, bitch like a 14-year-old when his mom takes away his candy bag, right? But he's deserved the right to do so, and he's always been this way. Okay, so we shouldn't expect anything differently, but pretty wild that the UConn squad had to end up taking an Allegiant flight. They ended up getting there almost a day late, right? So some people are saying, ooh, maybe they won't be rested. Maybe they won't have time to prepare. Maybe they won't get as good of a night of sleep, 2 or 3 days out from the Final Four. Does any of this impact how you're capping these games, Jovan? Do you give a shit?
Yeah, no, not really. I think it's the way that, that I wouldn't take this into account for really any team, but specifically for UConn. I mean, they're just they're built on structure. So if there's any team that I would have to say is most equipped for a little delay, I'd probably have to say it's them. Dan Hurley is like a drill sergeant, the way he has that team and that program going. So doesn't really impact it, but definitely not taking UConn.
Nope. Not taking UConn. Well, why don't we hop in and talk about the spread a little bit here. It is at 11.5. The total is at 161.5, 15 points higher than that first game we talked about, and for good reason. Okay, this is Alabama and UConn. These are 2 of the best offenses in the country. They might literally be, 1 and 2, or at least up there, top 10 best offenses in college basketball. Okay, we are blessed to be able to witness this matchup on Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. Okay, I'm stoked. Okay, I think this game could be a little weird. This one could be the close one that nobody expects. Everyone back in UConn to run it back. Do people understand how hard it is? Not only to run back and win 2 national championships in a row, but to get there? You know how rare that is? It's so rare that nobody can even rip off any off the top of their heads because it doesn't happen. you know how dominant you have to be? I don't know if UConn has that juice this year. Are they going to be able to rely on Cam Spencer? Is he going to be able to hit the open shots, all the time in the next 2 games to carry this team? Is Tristan Newton going to be, a dimer and an absolute machine behind the arc as well? I think this team, I would take last year's squad over this year's team. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. What do you think? Whose team is better, UConn last year or UConn this year?
I mean, it's hard to say this year's team is worse than any iteration of what they've had. It's just they're so cohesive, like as a unit. It's just there's no holes in their game. Like in looking at them schematically, there's so many different things they can do. Like they can work a high pick and roll, they can work in transition. Obviously, they can do a lot of off-ball screen, which is what they've been doing a little bit recently, which is probably going to be pretty pertinent to this game. But like, there's just nothing you can do. And then obviously they have the rock of Donovan Clingan inside, where if you let him get going, it's game over for anybody you play. It's just like, what are you going to do with this team?
So if Alabama wants to keep this game close, how do they do it? How do they slow down Clingan? How do they keep this game within the number?
I'll tell you how. Well, I would say like kind of one of the most interesting coaching jobs I've seen in tournament is probably what Nate Oates is doing, because people don't talk enough about like Bama's not just winning games miraculously. Like, yeah, they play a high variance game, so like a lot of things have to go their way. But like defensively, they've been impressive. And people don't think of that because like the game against Clemson was like 82-89. So you say, oh, it's just a track meet. But you got to pay attention to how Bama's doing it. Like they are picking very, very directly how they want to let you beat them. So like Clemson, what do? They let Ian Shefflin go for, however many. I think he had like 18 and 11. And he was like, at the end of the game, he was like, yeah, Ian Shefflin was playing a great game. We were playing good on PJ Hall. Chase Hunter was relatively quiet for most of the game. We were like, yeah, if Ian Shefflin was going to be the one to beat us, then we were going to let him beat him. Same thing happened right before that too. Like they had a really specific approach of how they're going at a lot of these teams. So like for UConn, they haven't been like the most impressive 3-point shooting team like in this tournament. Like they're 25-89 and there are a couple games in there like against Illinois, they went 3 for 17 from the field. Against Northwestern, 3 for 22. I mean, they had a little bit of a spike like against San Diego State, weren't great against Stetson either. So can guarantee you like they are going to pack the paints, and it's easier said than done. Obviously when Donovan Clingan's in there, they're going to make the guys like Caravan shoot. Maybe they'll give Stephon Castle space, which he's not a 3-point shooter, but they're going to let him kind of roam free. They're probably going to play a little tighter on Cam Spencer, obviously. That would be the smarter thing to do. Probably going to let Tristan Newton shoot off the bounce if that's the plan. Like, I think this game screams that Bama's going to figure something out early, and I think it's going to linger for the entire game. But, like, defensively, I think they're going to do a pretty good job at winning the chess match at some parts of this game, which the scariest part of it all is, like, even if UConn's missing threes, like Clingan's there on the offensive glass and Bama can't rebound anyway. So like, who's to say like it doesn't get ugly regardless? Realistically, I don't see how they stop UConn all that many times throughout that little defensive sequence, but they're going to pick very carefully how they score, which I think that's what they're really good at doing. And like offensively, they always control the tempo, and what they're going to do, they're probably going to play on offense a lot more small ball. Not that they don't do that anyway, but you're going to see a lot of small ball with, Jaren Stevenson at the 5. They're going to stretch Clingan out as far as they can. Like Grant Nelson is going to be probably pretty huge in the perimeter. Latrell Wrightsell is supposed to be coming back, which it's scary to back a guy who's a big time 3-point shooter coming back for his first game. Obviously you have the tournament setting in a big stadium too, so weird shooting backdrop, but it's just this type of high variance game that Alabama plays. I feel like this is the sneaky game where it all kind of lines up, at least for them to keep it close. I don't see them winning this game, but I can see them keeping it within the number.
Now, are you a little bit worried about UConn's defense against Alabama with how good and dominant they've looked, especially at defending the 3? Like Mark Sears, I mean, he's going to have to go off in this game for them to win outright. It's not rocket science. Like Mark Sears is probably going to have to drop. I mean, his points and assists, combined combo prop is at 24.5. So it's, odds makers are expecting him to go off and be very involved in this contest. He's going to have to probably drop, 25 plus points, 30 plus points for them to win this game outright. Is he going to be able to, dominate from outside, along with getting to the rack, which is why he's been so effective, because he's been so good at both this entire tournament against this Uconn defense. It's pretty freaking solid. 23rd nationally at defending the three. I'm a little bit worried. That's the one thing that I'm a little sketched out about. Will Mark Sears be able to do enough? Maybe there's some other guys you could tell me about that are going to step up, who don't rely on the threes as much for Bama. I don't know, but I'm all ears.
Well, I think they're going to have to rely on the three, which is not a crazy take, obviously, because that's what Alabama does, period. But the one reason that I like Alabama, not the one, but one of the reasons I like Alabama is because they just saw a very up-tempo team try and get to the rim on UConn, and they saw how it didn't work. Shout out the 30-0 run from UConn against Illinois. But Illinois, I saw a tweet earlier, they shot 3 for 25 from inside the arc with Klingon in the game. And when challenging him directly, 0 for 19, which a lot of that came from just Terrence Shannon trying to rim run, which that's kind of his game. So, like, they're going to rely on the three. They're going to do what Bama does. I like that Wrightsoul's back. Obviously, like I talked about, he's just coming back. It's first game. It's scary for a shooter, especially in that backdrop. But I don't care because, like, that's what Bama does. They take a lot of threes. They take contested threes. And the one reason I would be scared of Bama against the defense, or really I've kind of kept this for the whole season, is the team that forces a lot of turnovers. Well, UConn is great at not fouling. They play drop coverage with Donovan Klingon. So like a defense like that, they don't force a lot of turnovers. They're a really fundamentally sound defense, but turnovers and really what they're built on. So like Bama, they're going to have to make tough shots. And it's, again, that being the backbone of this offensive game plan for them is why it can get so ugly very quick. But you could say that for any single game Bama plays. So I'm kind of leaning into it. And I don't know if we want to talk prize pick squares just yet, but there's definitely one that I was waiting to see on the board, and it's up.
Well, keep that back pocket. We will get to that shortly. All right, I want to get your thoughts, your official thoughts, because it's already pretty clear. But spread, total, what do you got?
Give me Bama, of course, on the spread. Total, I'm a little less convicted on because I do think like Bama's probably going to go through a little bit of a shooting slump at some point in this game, just because that's going to be the entirety of their game plan. I do think UConn can go through a little bit of theirs too, especially when they come out early. And Bama is, I would assume, just forcing them, pushing them to, the perimeter with Caravan and Castle and everybody else. They want them to shoot. So I kind of have like a first half under kind of feeling. And I think a live bet on the total, maybe like halfway through the first half, is a pretty smart game plan to get going. Obviously watch the game and see when UConn makes a little bit of an adjustment, but yeah, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. I don't want to make a play on the total pregame, but I will be making a play on Bama pregame. Okay.
Well, I've got a square I love. I'm going to keep that in the back pocket as well. Let me give you guys my plays on the total and the spreads. I lean Bama. I don't love it. I lean Bama on the spread, getting 11.5, but I really don't love it. The total, I lean the over actually in this game. Seeing a total at 161.5 in the Final Four threw me off initially, and I know it's Alabama and UConn, but look, typically at this point, you see the totals a little bit lower because, points come at a premium. Down the stretch, these kids, sure, they had all week off, but a lot of nerves going into this weekend. The lights are bright. We've also heard a lot of talks about the basketballs being too inflated. We don't need to go all into that, but it seems like a lot of these, locations for some of these regions in this tournament have had the balls inflated way too much, and it's caused a lot of bad shooting, especially from deep. So if, NCAA wants to be sketchy this time around and we see those basketballs extra inflated, maybe that hurts a team like Bama that's going to rely on the three. I don't know. But I do lean Alabama on the spread here against UConn, and I do like points, as square as that might sound. Okay. Let's dive into the prize picks. I want to hear what you've got, Jovan, because you had a square in your back pocket here for this game that you've been waiting to get put up, and rumor has it it's up.
It is up, and it's Grant Nelson to hit a three.
Whoa.
Listed at his little 0.5 number. So, I talked about it a little bit when we were talking about just the game overall. Like, they're going to want to stretch the floor against UConn. That's not really a secret. And they just saw the game plan of how exactly you cannot attack UConn by trying to get to the rim, which Grant Nelson, he's obviously primarily a get to the rim guy. That's what a lot of the Alabama bigs are, but they're going to stretch the floor. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some minutes at the 5 with Wrightsoul back now too. So he is going to have open season, I think. I think the volume is going to be there. We've seen this with a lot of bigger teams who they want to speed up to, even throughout the regular season. The job has been to get him a couple shots on the outside. He's been successful in more different matchups than others, like against Purdue. It was kind of the same story where he was getting a lot of looks from the outside. I think it's going to be the same against Donovan Clingan and the rest of that Uconn defense. So I like him to hit a 3 in this game.
That is an absurd square. Is that a demon or goblin, or is that just a normal square? What do we got?
Just a normal square.
All right. That makes me like it even more. Love it.
Yep.
I got one square in this game as well. Not going to take too much time, but all this talk about Clingan, as there should be, because he's a monster and he filled in for Sanogo like he never left, right? He might even be better, some are saying, and he's still got a couple years left. Who knows if he's going to stay or whatever. I want to back the other big man. I guess you could call him a big man. He's a forward, a veteran who's been there before, a guy who nobody ever talks about. His game is not very exciting. Alex Karaban. When this team needs buckets, talk about a glue guy. Talk about old reliable. Okay, Alex Karaban, this guy, he's always there when you need him. All right, you see Cam Spencer, go off for 25 bergs or 30 bergs at some points this season. That kid's electric. He's more of a spark plug, higher ceiling, lower floor. You look at, obviously, Clingan. He's the freaking guy for this team. He's literally a superhuman down there in the paint, almost like a little mini Zach Edey. Maybe he even ends up being better by his senior season. I don't know. I don't have a time machine. But I'm looking at Alex Karaban right now, Jovan, and I'm thinking in my head, when this game is weirdly close down the stretch, when there's plenty of points to be had on the over that smacks, because I like that as well, who is UConn going to rely on when we see Clingan potentially double teams down low if need be, if he's taken over this contest? I think it's going to be Alex Karaban, not only down low, getting quick passes from Clingan when he's getting double teamed, but also on the 3-point arc. If you look on the board, you see Alex Karaban has a 1.5-3 square up on Prize Picks that is a goblin, meaning it is, minus money on the books. It's juicy, right? It's minus 150 on the books or something like that. It doesn't give you as good of a payout, okay? I'm looking at the chart, though. I mean, this guy's had 1, 2, 1, and 1, 3 in his last 4 games, and they're putting up a 1.5, not normal square, but a goblin square. And they're also putting up a demon square for 3s for him as well at 2.5. That looks like it has 0 chance of hitting. I love that. I think Karaban might hit a couple 3s in the corner as well. And if I'm liking points in this game with the over, if I'm thinking Alabama keeps it close, if Javon's saying they are going to make some of their 3s and make this game weird, I think UConn is going to have to rely on Alex Karaban, their most underrated, least talked about guy who's super consistent and always there, with weird Prize Pick squares up. I'm all in on Karaban. Maybe my favorite play in this game.
I like that you brought that up, because I'm going to be on that too, because he is like the primary guy that I'm talking about, where they're going to try and pack the paint and they want to make Alex Karaban shoot the ball. They're going to give him shots, probably going to try and alleviate, Cam Spencer shooting as much as they can, but him, Tristan Newton, obviously Stephon Castle, if he wants to shoot, they're going to literally splooge at that because he's not a volume shooter. But Alex Karaban's the guy that I think Bama is going to make him shoot. It really from the jump. I don't think you're going to have to wait until, towards the end of the game to get any volume from him. So I like that look too. And I will surely be punching in some Karaban squares.
Love it. Love it. Before we wrap up, I've got 2 things to say. All right. We are going to need a best bet and a hot take from you in this game. Also want to be perfectly clear with everybody listening to this. If you're catching this podcast episodes on Saturday or on Friday before the Final Four, maybe even you're listening on Sunday, trying to see, who we're picking to win the championship coming up here to lock in a future, or to see who you're taking on Monday. I'll tell you what, there's going to be a stream fired up this weekend, 24 hours long, starting on Saturday for these 2 Final Four games. I'll be hosting it. We'll probably have a couple people coming in and out, Bookit with Trent. Jovan might be stopping by to play some MLB The Show. We will be live on Twitch and YouTube at Bookit Sports all weekend, sweating out these games into Sunday, 24 hours. Nobody else is doing this. Figured let's get some bets going. Let's get some PS5 games rips going with MLB The Show, maybe even some 2K. I don't know. But let's get a 24-hour stream going this weekend. If you're listening to this before the Final Four, during the Final Four, the day of, go over to the Twitch at Bookit Sports or YouTube page and check it out. All right, I'll be on there sweating out bets, probably crafting up late nights, maybe even some KBO action for the people. Okay, rumor has it. Jovan, do you have a best bet, a best play? I don't care what it is in this game, and a hot take.
Best bet would be Bama plus the points. I believe it's at 12 right now, or 11.5, wherever you're getting it. Hot take, I think Bama shoots 53s. Which
shoots 53s.
Shoots
Holy
50.
smokes. Do you know how many they've shot in recent games?
Can take a quick look. I know they were definitely in the 40s-ish in that Clemson game. 36. They shot 36 in the Clemson game. The UNC game, they shot 26. I guess they've been a little lower, but I was looking at some of these games a little earlier in the season with teams that maybe match up a little more similarly to what UConn's going to give them. Obviously, like there's nobody who can replicate UConn. It's just a whole different animal. But like in Purdue or against Purdue early season, they shot 46 in that neutral site Toronto game. I think they match up at least similarly to the fact like they just don't want to drive in it. Donovan Clingan, just like they didn't want to drive in on Edey, and this is a better defensive team that's not going to let them do that even more. And they just saw Illinois try to do that, and they flopped. I think they're going to shoot 53s. How that ends up,
wow.
Hopefully they make at least 20 of them. So that would be great.
Yeah, you're going to need that for a cover.
Yeah.
All right.
You know what this game kind of reminds me of, Krabs? You remember the COVID year Gonzaga UCLA game that ended in the Suggs buzzer beater?
Sure. Insane game.
Yeah, so UCLA was, the Cinderella team, I guess, at that point. Alabama's not really that, but I guess with what we have, they're not too far off. But the Zags were 14.5-point favorites in that game. A large spread, and that obviously ended in the buzzer beater in overtime. Kind of getting similar vibes, where this is just going to spawn as a close game, like all the way through, going to be fantastic to watch, and we're going to get a really exciting ending.
Well, sign me up. Are you kidding me? Jovan, I mean, that was like, that was beautiful. That was poetic almost. Yeah. You're bringing me back to an unbelievable upset from a couple years ago during COVID, during a tough time. I'm all in.
Crazy.
That was almost like a storybook. Beautiful. All right, let me give you my favorite play in this game and my hot take for Alabama versus UConn, okay? My favorite play, it's got to be Caravan. It just has to be on his points. Caravan more than 13.5 points. Love that. You can bet that on Prize Picks. You can bet that on the books, whatever your heart desires. Okay, but I'm sure Prize Picks will be doing some sort of great promo this weekend. And if you're a new user, they do deposit matches. Okay, could not be easier to use. Go check out Prize Picks, the best app out there to get some action in. All right, Alex Caravan, more than 13.5 points is my favorite play in this game. All right, close second is probably Alabama spread. I am with you on that. So I want that perfectly clear. And my hot take for this game, Alabama covers with Mark Series going less than his points prop. He's set at 19.5. This is a crazy take. Talk about a hot take. This one is piping hot. Mark Sears, he's not going to be the one keeping this Alabama team within the number when everybody expects it, when he's been carrying them the whole way. I think it's going to be Grant Nelson and co stepping up and some of these other guards hitting some big shots. I don't think Alabama's run is over yet. I think this game will be super duper weird. All right. I do think it'll be within, a handful of points, and UConn does squeak it out. But I think Mark Sears is not going to be the guy keeping Alabama within the number. All right.
All right.
Let's move. Let's groove. We've got a couple other housekeeping items to finish before we close this pod out. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed the Final Four preview going into the weekends. All right. Be responsible as always. You never know what the hell is going to happen. That's why we love March Madness so much. That's why it's madness. Okay.
Yeah.
Before we close it out, Jovan, who are you taking right now to win the national championship? I gave you the odds. Right now, odds aside, I don't even care about them. Who's the winner? Who are you going with?
Yeah, it's honestly screw the odds at this point. But, I'm a sucker for a good comeback story, and we've been kind of talking about this one before we even got to this point. Did it with the Chiefs after a big, letdown the year before. Nobody's really talking about them on a back-to-back. Did it with Michigan in college football last year. Been kind of eyeing Purdue for a while, so I'm sticking with it now. It's very hard to repeat, even as good as UConn looks. And Purdue, Zach Edey just has that look in his eye right now where he's out to he's saying he's trying to prove everybody wrong, even though he's, 20 feet tall and has every physical advantage in the world. He's gotten so much better, though. That team's gotten so much better. So I'm still going with Purdue, and I can circle it back to that Zags UCLA comparison with UConn in that game. You know what happened to the Zags in the championship right after that electric buzzer beater went? They got smoked by Baylor. So
You're goddamn right they did.
I don't think it's going to be a drubbing like that necessarily, but it's the same kind of letdown I kind of see happening, which it's no knock to UConn. I think they're going to just be outplayed by Purdue, and Purdue's going to just finally get over that hump.
I'm with you. Not only do I think Purdue wins the national championship, I'll be betting them before the Final Four games at plus 195 to win the national championship. I'm not scared. I'm throwing a unit on it. This is the team I picked in my bracket to win the national championship. And although the rest of my bracket might be the worst one ever created on Earth out of 8 billion people, the one thing I know I got right is the national championship. Purdue. I've already seen it. Talk about due. The Boilermakers couldn't be more due. They finally get to hang the banner. They get their first national championship in program history for college basketball. And Zach Edey, the least liked superstar I have witnessed since somebody from Duke getting this much hate maybe 10 years ago. He's the one that's going to be hoisting that trophy, and Braden Smith is going to be the MVP. Purdue's year, I've already seen it. It's done. It's not going to be the Edey show as much as you think. I'm telling you, it's going to be the Smith show. Nobody's talking about him. Don't be surprised if he carries his Purdue team to their first national championship. I'm locking him in at plus 195.
Sure. Could be the difference.
Book it. All right. If you're listening to this podcast, we're going to wrap this puppy up. There is plenty more content to check out if you like this pod. All right. We are live every single weekday starting at 11:45 with Mikey Overs and his show the morning after, right into Behind the Lines. Then Trent, a.k.a. Bookit with Trent, who you all know, hosts the third stream right after us. We've got Lauren starting up her own show. We've got Shelly doing his streams. We've got Night Sweats sweating out the bets that we talked about, crafted up and locked in during the day at night and watching them. If you guys bet on sports, if you love sports, you just found the perfect spot to be. And go check out some of our live content on YouTube and Twitch as well. Okay? Jovan, hopefully we get a Purdue Boilermakers championship and we don't look like fools. And UConn, continuously beats down every team they play like they should be in the NBA. But I do have a good gut feeling that we're on the right side here. It's got to be the Boilermakers at plus 195.
Yeah, boiler up. And I can't wait to watch that championship game, which, not to pencil it in already, but I think everybody is dying to see that Purdue-UConn matchup, and I think we get it. But I wouldn't be shocked. Bama's looming. They're lurking. That game could get very ugly or get very close. Hoping it's close, but if we get Purdue UConn, that's one of the best national championships we've had in a while.
I can't wait to hear Zach Edey's comments after he wins a natty. He might be sounding off on some people. I don't even know what the heck he's going to say. He's acting like he was a 1-star recruit, okay? But he's playing like a 5-star recruit, and that's all that matters right now. Boiler up. They win the natty, and we'll catch you guys on the next pod. Thanks for listening. We'll be seeing you.